What do I think of your watches? That's the question for today. Do I like it? Is it a good buy? What else comes to mind? I've had this channel for a little over a year now. I've been blown away by the support that my channel has received. I'm thankful to every single one of you that has tuned in, chosen to subscribe and to comment and contribute to my channel. Of the comments that I often get, I really often get asked, what do you think of this watch or that brand? I obviously can't go through all of them, but I've trawled through a couple of thousand comments, and these are my gut reactions to some of those watches. Before we dive in though, and this is a key point, what I say doesn't matter. I wear what I like, and you should wear what you like, and you should never care what some rando like me on the internet thinks. Having said that, let's dive in. The Rolex Explorer 36, 39 or 40mm. Today, you can only get the 36 or the 40mm new. Here's the thing, before COVID, I actually traveled a lot with my job at the time. I was almost weekly at Chopin Airport outside of Warsaw, and I would almost always be sitting at Johnny Rockets getting myself a burger before my flight home. Next to the Johnny Rockets in the departure area, there was a Rolex dealer. They never had anything for sale, even before COVID. Well, sometimes they had OPs and Datejust, but pretty much never anything from the tool watch lines. Everything was also reserved at the time. But one day I walked by in the morning on my way to Warsaw, and I saw that they had the 39mm 214270. So when I came back that same evening, I walked by and I asked them, I said, is it still available? And they said, yeah, it was. So I bought it. I bought it because the Explorer is iconic. I bought it because everybody says it's the perfect watch. And I ended up selling it within a year. Rolex watches are immaculately produced. They are, for mass-produced watches, near flawless, but I almost never wore that watch. It was just too plain for me. The typical buyer of a Rolex Explorer is either looking for an ever so slightly more toolish dress style watch. So, the OP is too plain for them, the Datejust is too dressy, but you want something easy, but also not the Rolex that the majority buys. Alternatively, you're a person that buys completely into the whole story around the Explorer, Everest, mountaineering, history, all of that stuff. Now for me, my plain boring watch is the IWC Mark 20. It's largely just as boring as the Explorer, but I love it. Why? Because I love war stories. I'm a World War buff and I love Spitfires and Sopwith Camels and all that kind of stuff. So my boring watch that speaks to me is the Mark 20. The Explorer just doesn't speak to me in the same way that the IWC does. The Explorer is excellent though. If the story speaks to you or the watch just speaks to your aesthetic, you're not going to be disappointed. As for sizing, I do think the 39mm personally was the best of the designs, but honestly, this is a situation where you have to try the 36mm, try the 39 if you can get a hold of it, and the 40mm and base your choice on what you think. There's a bit of a size mafia out there when it comes to the Explorer. Don't listen to any of them. Buy the one that feels right to you, so you have to try it and figure out which one you prefer. Is the Black Bay Pro too thick? Subjectively, yes. It's about the same thickness as the 42mm GMT, but because of the smaller diameter and the shorter lug to lug, it does accentuate that extra height. The ratio is just more extreme. Objectively though, no. 14.6mm for a tool watch is on the thick side, but this is not an under the cuff kind of watch. You're going to be wearing a t-shirt or a hoodie or a pullover or, flannel shirts. It's going to be fine. Plus it's a tool watch. I don't apply the same standards of thinness to tool watches. Sometimes a little extra height does make a watch look a little bit more rough and ready. So it's not a problem for me. It's a super watch. The Longines Zulu Time Hodinkee edition. This is an excellent and good-looking watch. I've done a review of the Zulu Time and I absolutely love that watch. It's a fantastic buy in that price range and it's better than Tudor offerings, especially in terms of sizing for a GMT. Having said that, from a product perspective, I think it's a lazy design. This is more of a criticism of Hodinkee. I dig the steel bezel look. It's excellent. But if I separate the look from the inspiration, then I see an inspiration which is essentially, hey, let's do our version of the Explorer 2 or the Black Bay Pro, and it just comes across from a product perspective as lazy. That doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it. I think it's the most toolish of the Zulu Time simply because the bezel is steel and the dial is more matted. But it's not original. Not that I really think it's a problem that somebody in some company designed a watch expecting that people would like it because they like that kind of design. It's kind of their job. So just put aside that it's a blatant copy of a Black Bay Pro or a Rolex Explorer for a high-end watch. This is not a homage like a Steinhardt. If you can ignore that piece, it's really, really good looking watch. But it kind of illustrates to me that there is an emotional component to choosing a watch, which is not something you can separate necessarily from the, let's call it, objective aesthetic. The Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch. It's an icon. It's a near perfect watch design in my opinion. And because I also like the whole space story, this is a watch that speaks to me. I personally would go for a Hesalite, which I have, because it's more authentic to me. Some people might feel that the Speedmaster is a little bit chubby, which a lot of the Omegas can be, but for me, it's excellent. It does have one problem though. Nowadays, it's borderline too expensive. It used to be an excellent value buy, but Omega have really pushed their prices up range, and from a pure value for money perspective, I do feel it's getting to the very upper end of what I think is reasonable for the quality that you're getting. AP Cactus Jack. I haven't seen this watch in real life. I'm not one of the people that gets the call from the CEO of AP with an offer for this watch. I hate the Spider-Man with a passion. I have seen that watch in real life. I do not like the Alex models at all. I don't listen to Travis Scott. On a personal level, I don't like the way AP has leaned so heavily into marketing. The interview Hodinkee did with their outgoing CEO confirmed my suspicions that they are, and have been for a long time, all marketing and very little innovation or substance. They're successful, but I'm not sure it's sustainable. But this collab, I actually think it looks kind of good. I love the brown color. I think the general use of color is attractive. The fonts are cartoonish, and I think it's fun without being too in your face. The small details like the smiley moon are cool. Overall, I think it's a really well executed design. I would hazard a guess though that I would tire of the design over a short period of time. But yeah, I actually think it's quite cool. Which is the best Seamaster 300M of the current models? I think the fan favorite of the Seamasters, at least among the current models, are the white dial and the blue dial bond versions. But for me, it's the No Time to Die model. That's the 42mm titanium model on either that weird mesh bracelet that I've never particularly appreciated, or straight onto a NATO. Some people feel it's a little bit too brown with a bit too much faux patina, but overall I think it's an excellent model for a couple of reasons. Because it doesn't have a ceramic bezel, it's less shiny and has much more of a tool vibe compared to most of the other current models. It has no date, which just makes for a prettier dial, and has the added benefit that the watch is a little over 0.5 millimeter thinner than the date models. But honestly, you can't really go wrong with any Seamaster 300M. The Grand Seiko Pink Dial Shunbun. There are a lot of good things worth saying about Grand Seiko. Zaratsu polishing, high beat movements, and most importantly, exquisite dials. The Shunbun is no exception, but it has some niggles that I've reacted to every single time I've tried it. 1. The glass sits high above the bezel, adding an additional level of thickness that I think is unnecessary and throws off the balance of the overall proportions. 2. The pink dial isn't that pink. I was very attracted to the idea of a not too pink dial. I've been looking for a playful dial for a long time, but Nomo's pink is just too much, and realistically I would never wear a club with a fully pink dial. So I had high hopes for the Shunbun. But it really is subtle. It's almost imperceptible in some lighting situations, which is a shame. It could do with just a little bit more punch. 3. I like titanium on a lot of watches, but it feels wrong to me on this watch. The birch models and the other steel versions have the heft that I prefer for this type of sports watch, and I just want that specific heft more. It feels like a toy, which I've been unable to get myself used to. 4th, the spring drive is cool, but when you have the high beat, fully mechanical movement right next to it, it looks a lot better, and I just find myself questioning whether I will end up regretting not getting a true mechanical high beat Grand Seiko movement. Fix those 4 things and it would be a winner for me. That and the bracelet, which should taper more. The Zenith Chronomaster Sport. This watch got a lot of bad press when it was released, mainly because it looks so much like a Rolex Daytona. I've tried it on those several times and it looks amazing on the wrist, and especially the new models without the ceramic bezel are really a joy to wear. They are technically speaking a little bit on the thick side compared to a Daytona, but it's not really noticeable, and it's the price you pay for seeing a movement that's infinitely prettier than the standard Rolex Daytona movement, which is of course hidden behind a steel case back. It's a great deal cheaper too, which makes me a big fan. The Glycine Airman. The one I've had hands on, well, I've had hands on several, but the one that sticks out to me is the 40mm vintage model. Inside, I think, is an ETA-based caliber that does the job it's supposed to do. It's got only 30 meters of water resistance, which isn't a lot. There's no screw-down crown, and the second crown is, let's call it an acquired taste. But the dial does retro and vintage really well without being sort of all in on faux patina. A whole lot of components, including the fonts on the bezel, make it look like its own watch and not just a Explorer inspired watch. Most importantly though, the domed crystal really hits that vintage vibe, and it's a bit on the pricey side for what you get spec wise, but aesthetically I quite like it. Hamilton Khaki Field. Just like the Glycine, there are somewhere between 2 and 3 million versions of the Hamilton Khaki. Okay, maybe not 3 million, but there are a lot of options for pretty much every single taste. Hamilton milks this line, which is understandable. I would assume that this is likely their most successful line. I did a video a couple of months back about the Khaki Field Expedition, and I mentioned things that I like and dislike about the Khaki models. I've never been a fan of the Beobachtungsuhr-esque dual hour and minute numeral dials that you also get on something like a Rolex Air King. There's often far too much faux tina and vintage lume on them. I'm a fan of the Murph, which leans far more into the officer's watch or even a dress watch territory than most Khakis. My ideal Hamilton Khaki would be a 38mm Khaki mechanical case with the Murph numeral layout with the inverted Khaki Field Auto colorway. That would be my configuration. It's a cool watch. Field watches are almost by definition a little bit bland, but that's almost the point. And definitely a watch any person looking for a good field watch should consider. That was 10 watches, 10 quick takes. What are your thoughts on those models, and do you like this style of content? As always, leave a comment and like, subscribe. Cheers.